Welcome to the Iron Butterfly Podcast. My name is Megan Jaffer.
And I'm Katie Hopkins, and we will be your hosts.
We created Iron Butterfly Podcast in honor of Eloise Page, the original Iron Butterfly. 80 years ago, Eloise joined the Office of Strategic Services, trailblazing a path for what ultimately became the United States intelligence community. She rose the ranks from secretary to case officer, defying the norms of her time, and eventually became the first female chief of station at CIA. Eloise was known among her colleagues to be a fierce fighter with a core of steel, and she earned the codename Iron Butterfly. Our podcast continues her legacy, inviting the unsung heroines of the United States intelligence community to share their stories with aspiring leaders like you. Women in the intelligence community are special because they have dedicated their lives to studying the whole world. And through conversations with hundreds of women in intelligence over the past few years, we have come to understand that the world is at an inflection point. Women hold a more central role in society than ever before, and at Iron Butterfly Media, we are committed to amplifying authentic voices that inspire women to create wherever they are. So pull up a chair. Our changing world needs new ideas made real, which begins with you. Welcome to Iron Butterfly Podcast.
Hi, I'm Jessica Jones. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the National Security Institute, which is at the law school at George Mason University. It's a startup think tank. My way of getting into the national security space is a little interesting. I was a practicing attorney and realized I could not do that for the rest of my life. It just didn't feel like it was impacting the world and making a big difference. So I was living on the West Coast. I'm originally from California. Moved out to DC, went to SAIS at Johns Hopkins to just reset and try to build a new network. And when I graduated, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was doing, like every coffee, like everyone in DC, every coffee. And I had met my boss, who founded actually the think tank that I worked at years ago through friends who worked on the Hill. So he's like, come meet me, and we can talk about every opportunity there is. And at the end, like this huge monologue, right? Like we talked for like an hour. He's like, also on the side, I started this think tank. I don't know what we're doing. I'm not sure how to do it, but would you be interested in helping me out? And at the time, I was like, this man's crazy, which he's still crazy. But I also had a job offer from doing like international trade analyst compliance with an agency. And so part of me was like, should I take this really safe route that kind of looks like the law, maybe somehow it'll segue to like a law firm, like a very normal path that I could see, or this thing, and I put this in air quotes, a think tank, which I know because I'm in DC, but I actually don't know what they do because I haven't paid attention. With this guy I've never worked for, but seems really interesting. And I was like, debated it for a bit, and I was like, let's do this thing that I have no idea what it is because I just moved to DC to reset my life anyways. So why would I choose a safe route that looks exactly like what I just did that I was not happy with? So I started at NSI about 6.5 years ago. We thought it'd be like a 1-2 year thing, and I've been there since. And it's been awesome. I've built our organization. I've grown our team. We do all these cool things. We train students. We work with policymakers. Like we're constantly building new partnerships and new programming. And I would never had the chance to do any of that or learn all these new skills or things that I love doing had I taken the safe route. So it's been awesome. So NSI, it's great. Anyways, back to the first episode here. I would love to introduce Uyen Dinh, who's currently the VP for Government Relations and Strategy at Black Sky, and who previously held a variety of jobs on the Hill, including the House Armed Services Committee, HASC, and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, also known as HPSI. More importantly, Uyen is fun, energetic, and positive, as you'll quickly come to learn during this episode. She loves to bake, host fun events, and produce Vietnamese American cultural performances. My mom's from Vietnam. She would love to learn more about that. Almost Chinese New Year, so we're getting close. Fun fact about Uyen, she earned her second degree in Taekwondo and almost went to the Olympic trials in high school. Uyen, welcome to Iron Butterfly.
Thank you, ladies. This is an amazing opportunity. Iron Butterfly podcast. I've never envisioned that I would be here in this hot seat, so I'm honored.
Well, you've been on our list for a while. We're
Thank
excited
you.
to have you.
We are very excited to have you, and we hope you feel comfortable. And if you're a little nervous, it's okay. We're kind of nervous too because this is the first. We've done a teaser on camera. but we've never done a guest on camera. So for us, this is a big deal too. So let's just let's sit back and enjoy it.
Let's.
Okay. So we usually start the same way. And it's almost kind of a joke because, when you first meet someone and you say, oh, tell me your story from the beginning. Most people don't want to know from literally the beginning, but we do. We want to know, tell us kind of where you come from, where you grew up, how you grew up, and kind of what got you to the national security space, to the intel space. So let's just start from the beginning.
Sure. So I'm a Vietnamese refugee, and my husband says that I cannot say that I'm a refugee anymore because I am of a certain age. But in my mind, when I came to America in 1975, I was a refugee. So I sometimes still identify with that. So I was born in the middle of the Vietnam War, but in the city of Saigon. So my dad was an Army of the Republic of Vietnam, ARVN officer, and he was also the provincial governor. And my mom was a flight attendant for Air Vietnam. So we were considered middle class, and I had my own governess and I had my own nanny. Please don't judge. It's a small little country. There are jobs for everybody. Anywho, and then of course with the fall of Saigon, we had to evacuate. So we left Vietnam in the dead of night on a C-130, and we flew out.
Holy moly.
Yes, under mortar attacks, fire, you name it, the whole shebang. And let's see, where did we go? We ended up, we flew through Japan for a night or two. Then we were pushed to the Philippines, Clark Air Force Base, where there were huge tent cities set up for refugees. And the Air Force was semi-ready, not really ready for refugees. They were told, refugees are coming, have some tents set up. There was really, very little preparation, if anything. So that was 1975. So, and then we ended up in Guam, and someone found a broken radio, and they fixed it. And there were tons of refugees, I shouldn't say tons, a fair amount of Vietnamese refugees were processed through Guam. And that's how we heard on April 30th, 1975, that Saigon had fallen to communist forces.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yes. So long story short, my dad reconnected with one of his Army aviation pilot friends who sponsored us. And that story is a separate story unto its own. But Major Earl Russell III, also known as Rusty, and my dad flew together. And he told Rusty on the phone that, we were essentially homeless and stateless. And Rusty said, well, shit, I'll sponsor you. Because Rusty's a good old boy and a wonderful human being. And my dad said, it's just not me anymore, Rusty. I have a wife and 2 kids. So Rusty goes and fills out this paperwork to sponsor us. And back then, INS in 1975 says, you, as an American, you cannot sponsor somebody in the country unless you can show you can provide for him or her or these people, because these people will not go on public welfare and become, a public charge, if you will. So they denied him. And he's a war veteran, and he has these incredible medals. And the U.S. government said, we know you're a war hero, but no, you don't make enough money to support this family. So Rusty's like, I'll fix that. So he goes to his church and he asks his church, I have this family. They were, I don't have enough money to sponsor them because his wife wasn't working at that time. I need the church to sponsor the family. Would you do it? Sight unseen, the church says, yes.
Wow.
So the largest church in Manhattan, Kansas in 1975 sponsors my family to Kansas. And it was a shock for us because my folks were very civil. We came from a civilized society. My mom flew for Air Vietnam. She'd been to Tokyo and Taipei and Kuala Lumpur. I mean, kind of high society. And we landed in Manhattan, Kansas, 1975. I'm just going to leave it there. So
no disrespect.
All of our
Manhattan,
listeners in
Kansas.
Manhattan,
Yeah.
Kansas, we love you.
Yes. And so Rusty and his wife, Jan, took us to Walmart. And people followed us around because they had never seen, Vietnamese people, or I don't know if they thought what refugees would look like, but we didn't look that bad. It was just, I think it was just uncommon. So we went shopping, and we had a whole little field trip of people following us around. So anywho, that was quaint.
So what was it? It was your parents and you. Do you have any siblings?
And yes, and my brother at that time.
Okay.
So me and my brother.
And do you remember all of that?
I do.
Wow. That's
Yeah, my brother was 10 days old when we left Vietnam.
okay. So he doesn't.
He doesn't remember anything, but yes.
What do you remember most about that time? I'm sure it was so disorienting, like as a young girl being
Yes.
shuttled through different countries and then.
I think for me, though, it was just so abrupt. Like my dad, literally, he was in a hospital. He had been injured in a mortar attack, and he was like temporarily, partially blind, hobbling around. My mom had just given birth to my brother, again, 10 days old. He comes home, and I remember him saying, "We have to leave tonight." And my grandma was saying, "We have to eat dinner." My dad's like, "We don't have time for dinner." And literally, the clothes on our backs, a change of diapers for my brother, and we left.
Wow. So did you then grow up in Manhattan, Kansas?
Oh, no. After 6 months, and that was...
I love that response. Oh, no.
So you know what? My dad says, this country... And my dad had gone to school at Fort Knox at Armor School in the late 60s. And he says, "This is an amazing country, and we're never going to take a penny from this country." So he went to work in Manhattan, Kansas for the church that sponsored us. So during the day, I'm like, "What? You're like a former provisional governor. You're like a battalion commander. You were like the chief of..." He's like, "Doesn't matter. I took any job they had." So he was their custodial services during the day, and at night he bartended at the O Club.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I forgot what I was talking about, but anyways, we just
You went where you moved after
after
Kansas.
But there were limited opportunities in Manhattan, Kansas.
Sure.
So we moved to Northern Virginia because he had a distant aunt, and my folks pretty much started their lives all over again in their late 20s with brand new careers. And so we've been in Northern Virginia since the end of 75, 76. So we have paid more to the Commonwealth of Virginia in taxes than we ever did probably to the Republic of Vietnam.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
That is a really great story. I mean, thank you for sharing that first. That's just amazing. So you come to Northern Virginia, and so did you always know, once you're in high school that you wanted to serve the country? Your dad obviously had this mission kind of focus background, and he liked to serve. But is that something that was just innate in you, or you saw it because you were in Northern Virginia, and obviously this is the center of all of that?
So being a child of war and coming from a war experience, you have a different perspective. It's more pronounced for me, so I can only speak for me. So I always knew I would serve in some capacity, but I figured it would be after I was wealthy and had the money and the connections, and I could just fly around in my private jet and be the special assistant to fill in the blank. But, life has other plans. I really wanted to become an attorney because the law is a shield and a sword, right? It's a sword when someone is attacking you, and it's a shield. Let's the other way around. It's a shield when someone is attacking you, and if you know they're going to attack you, then you can use it as a sword to go on the offensive. Mm-hmm. So
That's really amazing. I've never heard anyone put it like that before.
So the law is it teaches you to think in a certain way. And a lot of these lawyers, they may look really dull, but they're very sharp inside.
Yeah.
They may look like, I'm not sure this is like a plastic knife, but inside they're all like Ginzu sharp.
That's hilarious. So you thought maybe a lawyer, and then
No, I knew I was going to go to law school.
Okay.
Win, lose, or draw, I was going to go to law school. So I did go to law school, and I loved mergers and acquisition, and that's what I actually ended up doing after law school. But it was very, how does she say that? It had its moments, but mostly average antitrust case take about 7 years to go to trial and or resolution. That's a long time. Anywho, so in the meantime, I was doing public access television in Northern Virginia. And long story short, when we didn't have anything to talk about or there was no current news, the cameraman and I would go and literally find events where the local members of Congress or senators were going to speak or present or whatever it was in the community. It's a small community, especially the Vietnamese American community in this area. So that's what we did. And I would literally like jump out of the bush with a microphone and say,
Gosh, you're like a congressional correspondent.
oh yes. And because it was unpaid, I was motivated to find a story. So that's what we did. And I would just jump out and say, Congressman so-and-so and say something and, either clever or inflammatory, and they'd have to stop. And of course, the first thing they'd look at me and then they look at the cameraman. The first thing they say is that camera on? And then of course they launch into it's local. It was fun. And so that's how one of the members of Congress, Congressman Tom Davis, found me. I think he got tired of me stalking him for my show because I didn't have enough material.
I'm dying. Well, I don't know why we should be super nervous. She's the professional here.
No, that was a long time ago. I was clearly a lot more positive and not so jaded.
Yeah, but that's all of us.
I
as we
know,
grow up.
exactly.
We all get jaded, I think. Oh my gosh, that's
So then
amazing.
that's how you got to the Hill.
Correct. I gave up a very lucrative law practice to come to the
You
Hill.
had your private jet at that point.
No, in my mind. In my mind, exactly. So I went to the Hill and took a massive pay cut. And I remember going to the boss and saying, I know we negotiated a salary, but something's wrong with my paycheck. I'm missing some numbers before the decimal point. And he literally said, welcome to the government, kid.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how I started. And I came to the Hill doing international relations for him because the Northern Virginia area is a huge, I like to call it a salad mixing bowl of so many ethnicities and community groups and so forth. So international relations was what I was doing. But I realized that was limited because without the carrot or the stick, the carrot being trade for international affairs, or the stick would be defense, it wasn't really a complete package. And so long story short, that's how I got into defense because somebody else was doing the trade and was like, no, you're not taking trade away from me. That's fine. So, sometimes it's like
Process of elimination.
yeah, when, hey, the universe closes a door, a window opens, be ready to jump through it. That's what I did.
Wow.
That is awesome. So you were on the Hill for several years, right? I mean,
A decade.
a decade.
A decade. I was there a decade. So literally, like the first couple weeks, I started. President Clinton started. He authorized the flights and the bombing of the targets in Kosovo, and I remember like I don't know what to do, and my chief of staff is like, go find the boss, and I'm like, I don't even know which men's room he's in. Literally, I'm like running around Cannon looking for my boss to see which. And I finally find him, and I'm like, we've just started bombing Kosovo. What should I do? And he goes, we'll find out like who authorized it, what's going on. Like we're gonna have questions from our constituents. Get on this. And I was like, anyways. So that was my first kind of like national security foray, and I did national security for Congressman Davis for 6 years before I went to the Armed Services Committee, where I was responsible for the C4 ISR. So that's command, control, computers, communications, ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. So at some point they decided C4 was too much and it became C3. And anywho, long story short, that was $27 billion back in 2003. Yeah. Yes.
So tell us, I mean, it's so interesting. We've had some people who have worked on the Hill, right? And on the podcast. And I think people listening probably have their own opinions of what it's like to work on the Hill, and especially young folks that are looking at the Hill now as a possibility. They might feel some sort of way. So I'm wondering if you could share like any story, like your best story, or maybe your most difficult story about being on the Hill.
I don't know if we have enough time for that, Megan. And I don't see any cases of wine or bourbon here, so
We have wine.
We do. We do.
Look, the Hill is an amazing place. Everyone says you got to pay your dues. What does that mean? You just work very hard to learn because you don't really have a whole lot of, I would call political skills going in. And I'm just speaking for myself. So you learn the political skills while you are mastering all the other skills that you need, the negotiations, the reading, the drafting of legislation, the changing alliances. Sometimes the people who are most helpful may not even be in your party or your boss's party. They could be in the other party or they could be independent. And some of the people who may be trying to shank you may not be the opposition or the other party. It could be the other side of the Capitol, the Senate. So, so it's always changing and evolving. So you just kind of have to be on your toes.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's so funny you say that too, because when she was first describing the hill, I was picturing like high ceilings and like grand furniture and entrances. Like, I don't know. I'm curious. Like, did you have that kind of awe when you started on the hill, and how long did you have that?
You know, to be a part of the legislative process is an amazing, once in a lifetime, as many lifetimes as you can do on the Hill, to move actual pieces of legislation that affect people, that affect lives, lots and lots of lives whom you will probably never meet. Or if someone does meet you and say thank you, like that's phenomenal because it's so rare, if you will. Mm-hmm. More often than not, people will complain bitterly about how unfair you are to them or their bosses, their office, their company, fill in the blank. And one of my ledge directors actually said, you know what? If everybody is equally unhappy at the end of the day, then you also did your job because there are no clear winners. But if there's a compromise and they all feel like they got a little something, but they didn't get everything, that's still a win. Mm. So it's all about redefining winning. And bipartisanship is not a bad word. It is a good word. And that is something, if you can work on together from either House or Senate and then bicameral, that is how the process is supposed to work. Mm-hmm.
Mm. Was there a particularly rewarding piece of legislation that you got to work on or that like sticks out to you that was bipartisan or was special to you in some way?
There are so many, and I apologize, but I'm again 10 years on the Hill. That's a lot of bills, so you'll have to forgive me. I just think of all the provisions that we managed to win over the Senate during my time moving bills for the National Defense Authorization, or the times we moved provisions that the House wanted from on the HPSI against the Senate Intel Committee, the House Permanent Select Committee for Intelligence, which I also served on. So, anywho, yeah,
that's really interesting. When did you make the jump from defense to intelligence?
In my career, you mean?
Yeah.
So I had served I'd served 3 cycles on the Armed Services Committee, and then the Intelligence Committee asked me, and they said, look, we'd like you to come over and run the process for the Intelligence Authorization Act, like the way the HASC runs its process. It's very rigorous, and there are milestones, and if you miss it, tough. And the Intelligence Committee, back then, the process was kind of like the Wild Wild West. And so that's why they brought me on, and I had the opportunity because I had the Title 10 DOD military intelligence programmatic piece of it. I came onto the committee, and I continue to do that and also help out with the other national programs. So
that's awesome.
That really is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious why, you served there for a decade, and, your first day you went to your boss and said, hey, my paycheck is missing a zero. Why did you stay for so long?
That's an excellent question. Once you're there, it's a bug because then you start feeling that you can positively affect things or influence things in a positive way to help, whether it's your boss's constituency, whether it's the Department of Defense or it's the intelligence community. You see gaps, you see things that other people don't see. And again, it was a very rewarding professional time for me. I don't know if anyone really can sustain that type of commitment, because it is so...
It's demanding.
It is, and it takes a lot out of you. And I will have to say that it takes more probably, and I'm going to date myself, but when I was going through that process on the intelligence committee, none of the women who were on that committee were married or even dating anybody.
Oh, wow.
Like, we joke about it, but it was like the Virgin Vault.
The Virgin.
I'm not kidding you, because it was in the old attic space of the Capitol. It was not underground. It was not OSHA compliant. When it rained, there was water and mildew. Maybe this is not an appropriate time to talk about the old office, but yeah, it was not OSHA compliant. And,
Wow.
yes.
Wow.
And don't forget, like, I worked up there during, let's see, 9/11 attack.
Yeah.
And there was Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. And so there was a lot going on. And there wasn't really a lot of time for just, dorking around, if you will. I remember sitting in my HASC office and I watched one of the ships, the carrier battleships, like, leave to go to war. And I remember sitting in my office at whatever time it was on the weekend, watching that carrier battle group come back in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like, you feel like you're in deja vu.
Yeah.
Except you're like, wait a minute, I'm looking at the clock.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you still have, I'm curious what your relationships with those women were like. I imagine in a space like that, those would have been really important relationships.
I think it really depends, right? Back then in the late 90s and early 2000s, women who were military legislative assistants, like, you had to work 5 times as hard. You had to know your stuff, because if you walked in there and you're a girl, they're going to be like, powder puff, cupcake. Like, what do you know? So you have to be prepared. You not just have to be, like, smart, but you have to be, like, politically smart too. And I'm not just talking like politics, whatever, but like the politics of that district, politics of that program. Kind of like you need to do your own little intelligence gathering and have a little intelligence dossier on whatever projects or programs you're trying to defend. But the women whom I worked with on the HASC and the HIPSI, very professional. They knew their stuff, sometimes very dangerously so. Like, how do you know so much? It's because they spend so much time reading and preparing.
Totally.
And so, yes. So I tried to learn as much as I could from them. But, on the Armed Services Committee, it's so diverse. You've got personnel. You've got, like, all these strategic accords, which I was not involved in, There's so many programs. So you just have to be smart on your own programs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what was next?
Oh.
After 10 years, what was that, like, switch where you were like, okay, I gotta now I'm gonna move on to my next thing?
Gotta
was
get
it
out
a
of the Virgin
personal
Vault.
thing? Was it a professional thing? Was it both?
It's called the Republicans losing the House.
Okay.
Yes. So everything was moving along, like, just fantastically, and then the Republicans lost the House in 2006. Yeah, 2006, that autumn. And so the new staff director said, Uyen, thank you so much, but you're sitting on essentially some salary that I'd like to give my side of the house. So it was time. The universe tells you when it's time, and then you don't fight it, and you're like, got it. So that's how I transitioned to the private sector, and I went to a company, a new space company that was doing commercial remote sensing.
That's
Why
really
space?
cool.
Why space? It's the final frontier.
Okay.
That was a long time ago. Maybe it's not that new anymore. So space is fascinating for so many reasons, but I came out of DOD and the intelligence community space, and the commercial space was just starting to kind of, spring, kind of like the little tulips. They were just popping their little heads up to see what was going on. So it was just an exciting opportunity and an exciting time.
That's really cool. What have you seen change
That's a
in the
good question.
space industry, like, over the last 20 years?
So just the explosion of innovation, small startups, that have now become companies, right? Fully matured companies, if you will.
Yeah.
You see that in the launch side. You see that in the small sat. You see that really it's the proliferation of it. And the amazing part is cheap. It's gotten cheaper. It's gotten cheaper to build, launch, and hopefully get to space. But it's still harder than it looks, but not as hard as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Do you think you'll ever go to space?
I don't think so. That's not really my bailiwick.
That's the best word I've heard all week.
And if you would like to know how much you weigh on the moon or on, I think, Saturn, or is it Jupiter, you go to the Air and Space Museum, the kids section, and it'll tell you. And I don't really want to go to a place where I'm going to be 500 pounds.
That'll put you in your
fair.
place real quick.
That's fair.
Real quick.
Oh my god.
So you know what
that's
someone
awesome.
asked me? I was at dinner, some kind of dinner party, and I think they were all lawyers, and maybe not everybody, but they were not in the government space, they were not in the defense space, they were not in the intel space, and I don't know why he felt the need to ask me, but he asked about the U.S.'s position in kind of the space race. And, we've always been the, strong, we've had a strong Navy, we've had a strong military. And so he was asking me about space and where we are compared to other countries. Are we that superpower like we are with our navies and things like that? What would you say to that, or that question?
The U.S. industrial base is thriving. It's kicking butt. Period. However, our adversaries are also kicking butt on their end, and they have more resources, and because of those structures in their government, they can do what they need to do without the constraints that we have as a democracy. Now, pause for a second. I'm a huge believer and supporter in like freedom, democracy, and all the values of good old Uncle Sam. Period. However, our adversaries, because of what they've been doing the past 20 years, they are very much on pace, or if not outpacing what we can do and what we ought to be doing. And so this is a challenge. And with everything else that's going on in the world, we need to really take stock of like, what is it we want to do and what we need to do in space. It's an enabler. It is so many things, but it may not be as free and free loving like it was back in the day when we pretty much owned it, right? So this is a challenge, and this is a challenge for the national security apparatus, I want to say the leaders, to figure out. And yes, there are resource challenges, but I think it's also a matter of like, how do you take the handcuffs off of U.S. commercial innovation and let U.S. industry and U.S. commercial capabilities just do what it has to do what it needs to do? How does the U.S. government like ingest this the enormity of all this goodness and put it to use? Because right now, current DoD acquisition and procurement laws, they take a really long time.
Yeah.
Like, very long. And there are smarter people who can talk about that and the acquisition process. But the bottom line is we are not able to turn these innovations over to the users and the warfighters in a time that they need to do what they have to do. I mean, think about all of your laptops, right? Like 18, 24 months, right? I mean,
Then we get a new one.
yeah.
Totally.
And Apple phones, like, who is saying, I want the first Apple that came out now? Nobody.
My husband, because he's a hoarder. Oh my gosh. But he's the only one.
There you have it. There you have it.
When, what would you say to people who get, like young people who get discouraged at the pace at which government moves? Like, I've heard people say, like, government just can't move fast enough to keep
True.
up with, like, all this innovation and all the creativity and, like, the strength that is the U.S. industrial base. Like, what would you say to those people?
Wow. I'm not smart enough to answer that one, but if they wanted to change or to help move change along, one of the things I worked on during the government was trying to find ways to bring smart talent, patriots from the industrial base and from the business sector into the government for short-term fellowships, even a year or two, and have the companies perhaps continue to sponsor their paychecks so they don't have to take such a crash, and then to go through that whole process. But that's one way to infuse some like new blood into the system, because without new energy and new ideas, I mean, we're just kind of crawling along.
Yeah, we become stale.
Totally.
So tell us what you're doing now.
So I'm with Black Sky. Black Sky is a data analytics company. We have a constellation of small sats that orbit the Earth, and we have, I want to say 15. Don't quote me on that. So because sometimes we have to deorbit one. So about 15, and of those 15, we are in an inclined orbit. So each of those birds, those satellites, can pick up an area. If you have a village or an area of interest anywhere in the world, of key interest, we can do that. Every satellite can do that up to 15 times a day.
Oh, wow.
So I can't do the math, but somebody in this room hopefully can do the math for that. But it's just not the picture. We run the analytics on it, and we give the user, we provide the user the analytics on that, and so they can click on it to find out like what the source was. And by the way, we do this with OSINT and in native languages, so it's just not a picture.
And for our listeners, OSINT is open source
Thank you.
intelligence. No,
Like out.
No, it's the forgotten int.
It's
so.
the
Yeah,
forgotten
it
int.
is
And
forgotten
so
int, yes.
I
Open
think,
source,
yes,
open source.
most people, people in the know, but for people who, well, in the know meaning like in the space know what it is, but just for the listeners that are learning.
Totally.
So I guess what's next for you? What are the dreams that are still, out there unfinished?
I'd like to be taller. But I don't think it has anything to do with the podcast today. Look, I'm a proud American. I'm thankful to be a part of the national security mission, whether it's in government or out in private industry, and like connecting the dots and bringing this capability to the edge, to the war fighters, to the guardians, the analysts, people who need it. And I'd like to give this analogy of like back in the day. I don't know. Did anybody watch Mad Men? Because clearly we weren't all born in that back in the day when they had to use the phone system where you'd like call and they'd say AT&T or operator say, I want to be connected to Brooklyn. I don't know, 999. And then they would call like somebody, and then somebody else would pick up the phone. Like nobody's doing that. Everybody has their own smartphone. So even today, like with Black Sky, you're going to be able to task and downlink what you need from your phone. Mm-hmm. So innovation and the tech evolution is moving so fast. So what we'd love to do is just to bring that to the users while it's still fresh.
I love it.
That is awesome. So switching gears a little bit.
Okay.
I hear that you have some hobbies and some passions that might be shared by some people in this room.
So I will take this one. So for our listeners, we do, before we record, we ask for a bio of our guests because we read the bio and we also put it online so everyone can see. And we ask a little bit about the guests. And one of your hobbies you listed was Taekwondo. And so another thing you wrote related to that was that you went to Olympic trials. And so I'm not going to ask you your age because that's rude, but I also am a Taekwondo fighter and I also went to Olympic trials. We're probably not in the same division just by height. I can tell by height.
What have I done to you?
No, by height. But I can ask it this way where you probably have competed against some of my friends, But which Olympics did you go to the trials?
So let me clarify.
Okay.
Let's back this train on up. Back in the day, I did practice Taekwondo. Like, I had to go to class like 4 times a week. There was no life. I couldn't get a date. That's clearly because all the boys I knew that I could beat them up. And I was nominated to go to the trials, but I did not.
Well, do you remember which Olympics it was?
It was very, very long ago when I was a teenager and a lot more fit.
So where was this, in Virginia?
Yeah, in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
It was a Vietnamese Taekwondo school.
So you should wear that with a badge of honor, because I actually went 7 days a week.
Woo.
And I don't regret it. It might be a little nerdy, but that was my thing. So I think you should wear that with a badge.
Well, thank you, but I don't know if I can really say with a straight face that I can, like, it's a perishable skill. Let's be honest.
It is.
If a 5th grader were to jump me and say, give me your, like, Starbucks card or something, or your Pete's card, or I'd be like, here you go, kid, and here's some Altoids to go with it.
No, I always tell people that you age out of it. It's like gymnastics. You know, the young people. I don't want to say kids, 'cause it makes me seem old too. But like, you know, you do gymnastics until you're 18, and once you turn 18, you're like senior in that sport. And Taekwondo is very similar, where you're young when you train, and if you make it into your 20s, you're like the seniors of the group. So I get it.
So you're calling me a T-Rex?
No, I am too. We're both T-Rex. No, now we are, I don't even know what they would call
I think I'm a
us.
fossil.
A fossil.
Well, listeners, if you want to see Megan and Uyen fight, let us know.
It's not going to be a fair fight because
No.
I will just hand Megan all of my coffee cards.
And I would take them. I would be like, yes, I will take them.
Maybe just arm wrestle or
Speaking-
something.
That's my love language, you know.
Coffee cards?
Yeah. Give me a blue bottle coffee card. I'm done.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
done.
That is awesome.
So we have we're coming kind of to the end. This is really sad because we could talk to you all night long. But we have 2 questions that we ask every guest. And so one of the questions is along the lines of the butterfly effect. And so we believe here at Iron Butterfly and the Iron Butterfly ecosystem that we are building, that everyone has the ability to make change and affect change. And it can be just through person to person. You're making, you're affecting change through a person. It could be through an institution. It could be globally. And so we were wondering if you could share with us an example of how you feel in your life you have affected change.
This is a hard one because I've thought about it and I was thinking, like, what could I point to directly? But I don't think it would be fair or honest for me to say I believe that I changed something or I could have affected from my perspective because I don't know. But there were major pieces of legislation that we moved that I was a part of during my decade plus on the Hill and also my time in the administration, where hopefully we made America a little safer. We provided resources and other assistance to our warfighters, allies, so that they could fight the good fight, and that we provided the right information and intelligence to our, again, our military, our intelligence community, and our allied partners, so that they can do what they need to do to protect, freedom. I mean, that's the end of the day. That's what I believe that I should be doing, and that's what I try to do, no matter what my job is. And that's to help the good guys so that they can fight the good fight and fight another day, because that fight's never going to end. And to also keep our eye on the bad guys and know that they are always going to come back with some other mousetrap or some other nefarious act or whatever it is they're planning. but we will be ready for them.
That's huge.
That's a great answer.
That's a really great answer, and it's a huge thing. That's
Totally.
huge effect,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's like what you led this conversation with. It's like the sword and the shield, right? You're basically using government as an instrument to really affect change, like, and protect freedom. Like that's really amazing.
Well, thank you, but it's just not from the government perspective. It's from industry, it's from academia, it's from all avenues, if you will. It's just really the intent, and if the intent is if you want to do good, you'll do good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. We're going to use that.
Yeah, we are.
We're going to use this.
So when we're at our last question, which happens to be our favorite question, and we have also heard is the hardest question, so we're very excited for this. So as you know, our podcast is named Iron Butterfly, which was the code name of Eloise Page, the first female chief of station at CIA. And we're curious for you, if you had to give yourself a code name, what would it be and why?
So this I also struggled mightily, and I even tried, chat whatever AI on Google like 7 different ways, and they gave me the weirdest names, and some of it was not even English, and I was like, this is just too hard.
That's actually so funny. This question predates ChatGPT, so
It
like,
really
nobody's
does.
ever done that before.
I just went to Google incognito, just punched a whole bunch of stuff. Anyways, clearly I'm not that sophisticated. I'm going to go with this phrase, and I'll explain why. I'm going to go with Diamond Eye.
Wow.
Diamond is the hardest natural substance on Earth. It's formed by external sources, right? Nature, some nurture in there, but nature. We're all pretty tough stuff. We're women in the national security arena. You can't be a cookie. You're going to crumble. You got to be harder than that. So diamond in that way, and diamond, let's face it. If there's a party and there's a fire, you want to find whoever has the biggest diamond, because that person is going to cut the glass and you're going to go out with him or her, right? At diamond. And eye, because the eye is unblinking. The eye is what the intelligence community is doing. It is watching, it is monitoring, it is learning, it is evolving, and its purpose is to find the gaps and the seams, and to inform and to provide insights to the warfighters, the analysts, the users, whomever it is, so that we all can positively affect change.
That was really thoughtful.
I love it.
That was really good.
Diamond Eye. That's a good one.
Diamond Eye. Are you ready? People are going to call out Diamond Eye when they see you now.
And I will duck, because I hope they're not going to throw something at me or jump me for a coffee card now, which I don't even have.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have to get you a gift certificate.
So you can jump her for it?
Wow, this was such a good episode. And it was our inaugural, video epised. We are just so thankful. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for coming. Thank you for trusting us to you didn't know us and you decided to say yes. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Megan, and to Katie and to Amanda as well. You all have been amazing ladies, because you have started and you continue to highlight normal human beings like me in the national security intelligence community, and it's just been such an eye-opening experience, not just to be here, but to listen to the podcast and learn about some of I'd like to call them colleagues. We may not know each other professionally or even personally, but we're all in the same trench.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of our listeners, thank you for your service as well.
It's my honor.
Thank you for coming on, Wynn. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
This has been an episode of Iron Butterfly Podcast. We want to thank the National Security Institute at George Mason Scalia Law School, our founding sponsor, and Amazing Women of the IC for their promotion. To learn more about Iron Butterfly Media, visit our website at www.ironbutterflymedia.com. You can also learn more about NSI and upcoming events at nationalsecurity.gmu.edu. And to find out more about AWIC, email amazingwomen.ic@gmail.com. And if you like the show, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Lastly, we want to thank our podcast producer, Amanda Young, and the entire Iron Butterfly team. Stay fierce, and we'll talk next time.